Rube, when I woke up this morning and I looked outside, there was water falling from the sky. Is that allowed?
Yeah, I've heard about it. It's called rain.
Hmm.
It used to happen somewhat regularly. It hasn't happened in a while, but yeah, us old heads remember it from back in the day.
Remember when it used to rain?
Yeah.
We're getting this podcast started off with some exciting weather talk. This is the Eagle Eye Podcast.
Well, speaking
presented
of which,
by Nissan.
I got to share this with everybody because this is one of the strangest things. So, do you use your phone for like the weather?
Yeah. Can I let people know that you're Reuben Frank and I'm Dave Zangaro?
So I checked out the app, the weather yesterday, and it was 118 degrees. And then the forecast, if you can see down there, was for the rest of the day was up to 140. So something was kind of weird there.
Yeah, I hope that wasn't a real forecast.
Maybe. I think we're a few years away from that.
Okay, good. We have a lot to talk about today.
We do.
We're in the middle of week 12 already. It's hard to believe.
It goes by fast.
End of November. Yeah, it is amazing. I feel like we were just getting ready to talk about the Brazil game, and now, but since it somehow feels like that was years ago too. At the same time,
yeah,
a lot to talk about. This is a tough game against a pretty good Rams team that I know they started off slow, but once they've gotten healthy, they've turned things around. They're 5-5. They really need.
They were 1-4, so
yeah, they really need to pick up some wins. So this is not an easy game for the Eagles. So. We'll go through some matchups. We'll answer some questions at the end of the pod. But today we want to start off talking about some injuries, and specifically with the quarterback. Jalen Hurts to start the week was listed as limited with the ankle. That was the ankle that Nick Sirianni kind of divulged on a Friday a few weeks ago. Didn't mean to. That was the week where Jalen Hurts had a rest designation, but he thought it was the ankle. Take us through a little bit of what's going on with the quarterback here.
Yeah, and so the Eagles had the mini bye, and they put Jalen on like a week-long lower body leg strengthening program, which is really interesting. I've never really heard of such a thing, and obviously during the mini bye, guys are going to lift and stuff, but it was a specifically designed lower body ankle leg program to get him stronger. And look, he's never been healthy going to the playoffs. I think by the Super Bowl with the bye, he was starting to get close, but certainly the first couple games of the postseason in 2022, he wasn't. Obviously, 21. He was doing interviews in a boot after that game, and last year he wasn't healthy. I think it was the ankle. They never really told us, but he was definitely hurting. So I think if this team's going to win a Super Bowl, they need Jalen as healthy as possible. I think that's obvious. And this is designed to keep him as close to that as possible. You can't control everything, but designed to get him through these next 2 months as healthy as possible. And so being limited to practice Wednesday was part of that program. And then he'll be full, we think, on Thursday. And obviously we'll be fine for Sunday. But, I like that it's specifically designed for to address what's been kind of a lingering ankle issues that he's had for a long time. He had surgery on the ankle. So we'll see. You can't control everything, but you can help your odds with something like this. And I think their trainers are pretty good. And, we'll see how it goes. He seemed a little upbeat, talking about it, which was surprising.
I can't remember him ever openly talking about any kind of injury or physical thing like he did on Wednesday.
Yeah, and that struck me the same way. I didn't think he'd even acknowledge that it was a thing, but he did, and which was interesting in itself. So, there's a reason when he does everything he does is for a reason. It's carefully thought out and planned. So he went in there for a reason, saying, "I want to talk about this." Maybe. I don't know. I can't look into his mind. I'll never understand how he thinks, but I think it's a positive that he embraced it. He seemed to embrace it. He didn't scoff at it. He seemed to think it was helping. So, and these are things they played Thursday night, so they're off Friday through Tuesday. They practiced Wednesday. They were in for a lift, I think, on Tuesday. But he was in there every day, doing stuff that was specifically targeted for his lower body. So I think it's a positive.
Yeah. Now let me ask you this, because it's tough to hear about an injury that initially they seemingly tried to hide, And then there's a strengthening program, and he's limited to start the week coming off of the mini bye week. Not that we shouldn't take what they say at face value, but as part of you, like, okay, I wonder exactly what's going on with this ankle.
Yeah, I think that's natural. And, we've certainly seen him run without looking like he's favoring it or anything. You see him in the locker room, he doesn't have an ice bag on it. So, but it's just, they obviously lie to us all the time. I think we
and especially about the quarterback's health. Like, this is not a new pattern.
Right.
I think we've seen over the years that they want to be kind of hold the quarterback's health closer to the vest.
Yeah. And I think that's probably every team, I would guess. But I don't really know. I think the fact that he acknowledged it and talked about it tells you that there's something there. He didn't just kind of play it down like, I'm fine. That's what I expected. I thought he'd say, I'm fine.
Yeah, and that's kind of been his answer in the past. Like, after the report came out after Nick said it, and then the reports came out about the ankle, he was asked about it after the following game, and his response was, "Did I look hurt?"
Yeah.
But there's clearly something going on there. It's nothing to panic about, but I mean, we'll be watching it over the last 7 games of the regular season just to see exactly how it holds up, if it becomes an issue at some point. Because you're right, like, having him healthy going into playoffs is a really big deal, and they haven't had that.
They've never had it. And again, when you run the ball 50 times and throw it 22 times, that helps. If you're able to sustain that, you're putting him at less.
Although some of those runs are him.
True as well. But he is being asked to do less than most quarterbacks as far as just the number of plays that he's out in the open field or dropping back. I mean, there's not a high volume of pass plays. So if they can continue running the ball the way they have, I think that'll help too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, certainly something to monitor with the quarterback going forward. Some other interesting injury notes to start the week. No Devontae Smith, still with that hamstring. I watched him walk off the field after that Thursday night game. He was hurting.
Yeah.
He was limping, and then he had to go stand there and smile while they gave him a cake and sang to him, but he was in some pain. So no Devontae Smith to start the week. No Milton Williams. He has that foot injury he suffered in the game. I expect Milton to play because he kind of plays through everything. He's one of the more underrated tough guys on this team.
Yeah.
Bryce Huff, the big news on Wednesday, he's going to have wrist surgery today. So he's going under the knife. It's something that's been bothering him for a while. He's been wearing a cast on that left hand. And it was at least the reason Vic Fangio told us his snaps had decreased the last few weeks.
Yeah, I think that's probably true. I mean, I think because I don't want to say he had turned the corner, but he was starting to show up occasionally here and there. And I think they like the rotation. So I do believe that that's the case. It's a position where they have some other good guys. And I mean, Jalen Hunt complicates it because he's hurt as well with an ankle. But, with Huff, it's disappointing because you wanted to see where it was going to go. Like, he was finally starting to at least, do something out there. And now he's going to be now they think they'll have him back by the end of the regular season. I would expect he'd go on IR.
Yeah. And that was kind of the reason for the procedure now is that the hope is that he heals fully and has a better range of motion in that hand. He's able to get grip with that left hand,
right? And
then he'll be a factor, or at least a part of the rotation late in the season. I mean, at this point, it's about recouping some value on him. I don't think he's going to be worth that contract. I think that ship has kind of sailed, at least for this season.
Yeah.
So it's about trying to recoup some value out of that deal.
Yeah, no doubt. So I'm not sure. I mean, Jelix he did not practice, right? He wasn't limited.
No, he was not limited. Did not practice, ankle injury.
And we saw him doing some running on the side with a trainer, gingerly, kind of not all out. So I don't know if he'll play. So either have a short bench or you bring some up for the practice squad.
Yeah, they have 2 edge rushers on the practice squad. The most likely one will be Teron Jackson, who just came back here not long ago, former 6th-round pick out of Coastal Carolina. They could bring him up, but really, I mean, there were 3 guys on Wednesday, edge rushers who are healthy on the 53-man roster. It's Josh Sweat, Nolan Smith, and Brandon Graham.
Yeah.
And one of the guys they play on the edge who's not an edge rusher is Milton Williams, and he's hurt.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, they'll clearly bring somebody up, assuming Jalix can't play. It's too bad because Jalix Hunt's been showing up a little, giving him some good reps, limited reps.
Did not play a single defensive snap on that Thursday night game, and now it seems like it was probably related to the injury.
Yeah. Yeah. The good news is Sweat's really playing well. He's in a good stretch. Nolan Smith's starting to
He's playing well.
Really play well. He's an interesting player.
I went back and watched all of his plays from the Thursday night game. He's fun to watch. Like his tape is fun to watch because they always talk about like flowing to the football. Gosh, his effort is unbelievable.
Yeah, he charges to the football.
He's going to force a fumble on one of those bubble screens one of these days.
Yeah,
because he charges at it and he hits. He gets a head full of steam. He hits you pretty hard.
Yeah.
I think we'll see a forced fumble from Nolan Smith on one of those plays by the end of the year.
There's your bold prediction.
Mm-hmm. And even his sack was impressive. It was kind of like they call it like a ghost move. He got the tackle to punch at him, and then he rips under him. Like it's something that when he came in the league, it's like he has speed, but he can't just consistently win around the edge. You can't do that in the NFL, really. So to like see him have a concept of a pass rush plan is really encouraging.
Yeah, and that's something he said during the summer that he worked on moves, like learning moves during the off season. So that's showing up. Plays with tremendous effort. He's an unusual player because he's usually those like 250. I don't even know. What do you think he weighs right now? 250, 245, 250?
I would guess like 245.
Usually those guys are not physical players. They're quick. You know, they beat you with speed and quickness. But he's a really physical player at 245, 250.
Set the edge.
Yeah. And I had my doubts whether he would get to this point. And maybe it wasn't fair. He's only in year 2. I was too quick to I certainly didn't draw any conclusions, but it was getting a little discouraging.
I think the way we framed it before, at least I think the way I framed it before the season was like, not that it's bad yet, but like you need something out of him in year 2.
Yeah. And then the first month you didn't get anything. It was getting concerning, but yeah, he always plays hard and you
can find a role for that guy, even if he,
absolutely.
You know, like you hear the way his teammates and heck, you heard Nick Sirianni talk about him. He's a favorite in that building because of the effort.
Yeah, no doubt.
The effort and the toughness. And you can find a role for that guy. It's similar. I shouldn't say this, but it's similar to like when Derek Barnett wasn't producing.
Yeah.
His teammates still liked him because he still played hard. Now he had the dumb penalties, which became a negative, obviously. But like
he's still doing it too.
He's still doing it, I know. But there's a reason like he was so beloved by his teammates, and it's because he played with effort and he was tough. And Nolan has some of that in him. Hopefully he has a higher ceiling, but definitely some similarities there.
Yeah. Yeah. Both first round picks and it's he's a fun player and he's a fun guy. I mean, he's got a great personality. He's funny. You know, did you ever shake his hand?
Oh, he'll do the grip.
Yeah. What is that?
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, Nolan, I'm a piano player. You got to like chill here. But certainly encouraging. You don't want to get too far ahead of yourself, but if BG retires and Sweat leaves, he's a free agent. Where are you here? I mean, you might only have Nolan and Micah Parsons might be your only guys.
You have Huff under contract next year.
Yeah. Well, that's yeah. So
let me ask you this, because the Huff injury comes the Huff injury comes before the trade deadline. He gets shut down after the trade deadline. Do you think they knew the severity of it? Do you think they knew surgery was an option? And if they knew he was getting surgery, do you think it would change the way how he handled the trade deadline?
It's an interesting question.
Because I think the reason they didn't make a trade was because they felt pretty good with the rotation. Yeah. They're looking at this like, well, if we trade for someone, then another one of these guys is going to lose snaps. But now you're without this guy for probably at least a month.
Yeah. I'm just not sure you trade for somebody, give up a pick just because you're going to be missing a guy for a month. Probably not. But I don't know. I don't know what they knew and when they knew it. I don't know. We will never know.
Yeah. It's fascinating to think about because at the time, if you thought, okay, he's going to play through this, he'll be okay. He was actually getting some decent pressure, even with that cast on and his limited reps.
Yeah, I think he forced a fumble in the Dallas game.
Yeah, he had a strip sack.
Yeah.
It was kind of like no one paid attention to it. It was a really great play.
It was. It was at the end of the game.
It was.
Yeah.
But like they're still trying to not let you sack the quarterback.
Oh, sure.
So
yeah. It still counts.
Yeah. We'll see what happens there. Any other injury stuff you want to talk about? That Devontae hamstring
it's concerning.
At a certain point, like with a soft tissue like that, probably just need the rest.
Yeah. I guess it's in that area where it's not serious enough to shut him down, but it's bad enough that he's not 100%. If shutting him down is going to help have him 100% for the last month of the season in the playoffs, you have to do it.
Yeah, he's been on the injury report now for like 3 weeks. Yeah. And
he's clearly not himself.
Yeah, he's missed like the first day of the week, each of the last 3 weeks. And then at least the last couple of weeks, he's been limited the next 2 days. And he plays on either Sunday or then in week 11's case, Thursday on a short week. At a certain point, like you wonder with the hamstring, if it's better not to just sit him down for a little bit.
Yeah, they're usually pretty good about that. If they feel like he has a chance to get worse, they'll shut him down. So maybe they don't feel like he's at that point. They're entering a game, a stretch of games where they need their weapons. And I mean, Dotson's made a couple plays here and there, but it's kind of scary going into Rams, Ravens, Steelers without, you shut him down for the Panthers. I mean, I don't know. Yeah, at least you have Covey coming back.
Let's talk about that a little bit. The Eagles activated Britton Covey's 21-day practice window. He's been on IR since he got hurt in week 3.
Week 3.
So it's been a while. When he got hurt, it was a shoulder injury. It was a fracture. They said about like 6 weeks to heal. So he's beyond that now. I think he's going to be the team's punt returner again.
I think it makes sense. And as good as Cooper DeJean has been doing it, and he's really good at it, I think Covey's just as good. And I mean, the guy averaged 14 yards a punt return last year. So I just think you're playing with fire when you send him out there after he plays defense to return punts.
Yeah. And Cooper, I mean, he's playing 86.9% of their snaps since the bye.
Yeah.
On defense.
I just think it's a little like if he was significantly better than the next best option, then you do it. But as long as you have the roster space and assuming they put Huff on IR, you buy yourself a month there at least. I would have Covey do it.
I would too. And give Cooper DeJean credit because he's making it like a little tougher because he's looking so good. And you're like, well, you don't have to use the roster spot on Covey, but I think he's worth that roster spot to make sure Cooper DeJean doesn't get hurt on special teams. We know Vic Fangio doesn't want him returning punts. He's been open about that. And I remember this team without Cooper DeJean on the field, and I don't think you want to see that again.
No.
If you can avoid that, you do it.
No, it all turned around. It's not the only reason, but it was a big part of it. And yeah. And also, and this is kind of a minor thing, but if Devontae's out, at least Covey can catch the ball, get you 8 yards, 6 yards on a, out of the slot. So he might have some value there too.
Mm-hmm.
I think he plays Sunday night.
Yeah, he was a full participant to start the week. So we've seen that now with these guys coming back from IR. They're full and then they play.
Yeah, and maybe
you said it's kind of changed.
Yeah, and I think they just kind of maybe waited an extra week before they opened his practice window. But yeah, it is a change. But maybe they're keeping the guys on IR a week longer, getting them ready. I mean, Jordan Mailata didn't even practice. He opened his window and he played. So
and played really well.
So yeah, I think we'll see Covey out there Sunday night.
Okay. You had talked to Jordan Davis yesterday a little bit. He's kind of elusive for us during the week. We don't get to talk to him very often. You did, because Jordan, I think he's playing pretty well right now.
Yeah. And I waited him out. He was doing an interview outside with, not sure who it was, but he was reading promotions in Spanish. It took a while. It's fun to watch him do that stuff, though.
He has a good personality.
He really does. He was having a lot of fun doing it. But I was able to get a few minutes with him, and he's playing really well without making splash plays. In that position, you're not going to get, a ton of them. Some guys do. Some guys,
and eventually he'll make a play.
Yeah, but I think he's been solid, and I just talked to him about that. He said a lot of it is just, you just keep getting better and better until you get to the point where you're a decent player, and he thinks he's at that point, and he thinks it's the best stretch of football since the bye that he's ever played. Maybe it's a low bar. I mean, he hasn't been awful, I don't think.
No, he hasn't been like a non-Rust Rule player. Yeah.
No, but I just think when you're taking 13th overall, people look at you differently. And has he played as well as the 13th pick you would expect to play? No, but he's solid. He's not a liability. He's been good against the run. I just think he's a good player, and I just hope people look at him that way. I'm like, it's easy to call him a big disappointment because of where he was drafted. He doesn't control that. He controls the way he plays. He talked about his conditioning. He's clearly in better shape than he's ever been in. He said he goes home Tuesdays and Thursdays and does an hour of cardio and stuff with his brother twice a week, and that's really helped him. He's just imagine, Thursdays are a long day down there, and he goes home and does extra. He's really upbeat. Seems like he's in a good place. I think they're using him correctly. He's not playing too many snaps, and they're getting a lot out of him. Yeah,
I mean, you talked to some of his teammates too. I think that's the biggest indicator of how well a nose tackle's playing is like how willing the linebackers behind him are like telling you, no, he's playing well because they're making plays because they're clean.
Yeah, I asked Zach Bond about him, and he said, he might not have the stats, but he said my stats are really his stats, because if it wasn't for him and Jalen Carter, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing. They're freeing me up to make, whether it's forced fumbles, tackles for loss. It's their stats too. So it was really cool. He just, when I told him what I wanted to ask him about, his face just brightened up. Of course, he just finished an interview with Zach Berman, so that might be part of it.
Oh, man. Shot at ZB on the
Well, you know how Zach's interviews are. I wasn't sure I was ever going to get a chance, So then you graduated junior high school, but anyway, it was exhaustive. But that's what makes him good. Anyway, Zach Bond just raved about it. He just and he's a defensive MVP on this team. So when he speaks highly of somebody, he's not a BSer. Zach Bond. So it was really cool to hear what he said about him.
Yeah. Kind of off topic, fun stat from Next Gen Stats.
Yeah.
Jalen Carter is the only defensive tackle or interior defensive lineman in the NFL with multiple pressures in every game he's played this season.
Doesn't surprise me. Yeah. He's another one. Like, I don't know. He hasn't had a sack in a few weeks.
Man, watch him.
He's playing unreal. Yeah. He's been, this team's had some, we saw Fletcher in his prime, Jerome Brown, Corey Simon briefly, kind of for a couple of years. He's as good as any of them. Yeah. And for me, Jerome's the standard. And he's close.
Yeah. Fletcher, certainly.
Fletcher too. Yeah. I think, obviously Jerome, he only played, I think, 5 years. Fletcher had like a 6-year stretch where I think he was as good as he was second best interior lineman in the league.
Yeah. Unfortunate for him that he played in the Aaron Donald era.
Yeah. Who the Eagles don't have to deal with.
Yeah, that's good news, but they do have other good defensive linemen we'll get to.
Yeah.
But when you were talking to me about Jordan Davis a little bit, it got me thinking about the most underrated players on this team. So the other name on defense that came up with was Reed Blankenship, just because we've talked so much about the linebacker play. We've talked about Jalen Carter up front. And the back end, like Quinyon Mitchell's gotten all the highlights. Reed Blankenship has 3 interceptions, all 3 the same way, by the way.
Incredible.
But he's just been really solid. And even like the play on that 4th down against Washington.
Where did he come from?
Zach Bond makes the play.
Yeah.
But that play was just as much Reed Blankenship taking that crazy angle and running like a psycho to the football.
I loved watching that. I don't even know where he came from.
Like, you can hear the noise he makes, like yelling on his way to the football.
It was an amazing play, and biggest play, maybe the biggest play of the game. But yeah, and it's uncanny how all three of his interceptions have been diving, getting his hand under the ball. And I think we talked about this. I talked to him last month about his interceptions, and he said he studies wide receivers and how they get their hands under the ball, and it's come in handy. I mean,
all three of them.
All three of them. I mean, I don't think he's ever had an interception where the ball just comes to in the breadbasket. He's just diving. He's a real ball hawk and very instinctive. He knows where the ball's going. He knows what quarterbacks are doing. He reads their eyes. This is a team that hasn't, over the last few years, gotten a lot of interceptions. He got 6 of them now. Well, 1 plus the 1 is rookie year off Aaron Rodgers. Yeah. So he's got 7 in basically 2 years, or basically a year and a half in 4 games.
Yeah, and in between him and CJ this year, they have 5 picks.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been a long time coming since this team was forcing turnovers like they are. So that's really encouraging. And he's just really solid. He's just really consistent, doesn't have bad games, undrafted. It's funny because you say, well, Jordan Davis, it shouldn't have been the 13th pick in the draft. Well, Reed Blankenship didn't get drafted, period. And the Eagles got a starting safety, a high quality starting safety. These things even out. And that was a hell of a move. I'd love to talk to Howie about what he liked about him at Middle Tennessee State.
Yeah.
To sign. He wasn't even a high priority undrafted guy, right?
No, he had the second lowest amount. I think he had 13 undrafted players. He had the second lowest guaranteed money.
Yeah.
And it was like $5 or $10 grand.
Yeah.
So they liked him, but I mean, it's not like
that much.
Yeah. And he was a 5-year starter in Middle Tennessee. He had like 500 tackles. I think it was like 425 tackles in college. So like he put out good tape for a long time. I think there was just thought that he didn't have like a super high ceiling. Maybe he was maxed out.
Yeah.
And he's played really well.
Hey, he's probably not a guy that tests well. Did he even go to the combine?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah. So, those are moves that really help and don't get a lot of, I mean, the day they signed him was like one line in the bottom of his story.
Yeah. It's kind of crazy that this is way off topic, but we talked about it on Birds Huddle yesterday.
Never stopped us before.
The Eagles defense right now, 7 of their 11 starters are rookie draft picks on their rookie contracts.
It's incredible.
It's incredible, but also like so necessary because of all the big contracts on offense.
Right. Yeah.
And then like Reed doesn't get included in that because he's undrafted and not on his initial contract, but like certainly in that mix.
Yeah.
Of like a cheaper homegrown player.
Yeah, but other than Slay and BG, I mean, there's not a lot of money being spent on that defense, but there will be
eventually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sooner than eventually. I mean, they got to figure out what to do with Zach Ball. But anyway, we're off topic, but yeah, I do agree that Reed's one of the more underrated guys.
And then on offense, the 2 names we came up with were Kenny Gainwell and Cam Jurgens. Gainwell, I think, is pretty self-explanatory. He's playing behind the biggest freak in the NFL right now. You see they added that play to Madden?
I saw that. And on Gainwell, I just really admire the fact that he's never been a starter here. He started a couple games when Miles was hurt a couple years ago, but he's backed up 3 Pro Bowl running backs, which how many guys do that? 3 different Pro Bowl running backs. He's never complained about his carries, his touches, his playing time, and he's always ready. He always answers the bell. And those 3 carries in a row, I mean, that was huge. When Saquon needed a rest there, and Kellen kind of sensed it, and he got Gainwell in there, and what was it? 35 yards on 3 carries and set up a touchdown. He's always ready. I don't know if he'll ever be a starter. I'd like to see him get the chance. I kind of think it might. I think this is a perfect role for him. I think he'd be okay in that role, but I think this is a great role for him. But yeah, he's a valuable guy.
Mm-hmm.
He's got.
You love yourself some Kenny G.
I do. He's got like this.
I looked up earlier this week because you wrote about Kenny. I was like, I wonder when the last time I wrote a Kenny game. I looked up like the last 6 Kenny Gainwell stories were all you.
Is that right?
Kenny probably doesn't know who I am.
we have guys that we.
Yeah, we end up like. Yeah, I was thinking about that. He's like happens naturally.
Yeah,
like we end up with the guys. Who,
I don't think I've ever written like a CJ Gardner Johnson story.
Yeah, once I kind of figured out how to talk to CJ, it made sense for me to do it.
Yeah,
I think I'm a big Nakobe guy.
I did that big N'Kobe Bond story 2 weeks
Mhm.
ago. I like talking to N'Kobe. He's funny. Although my transcriber just doesn't understand what he's saying. His accent's so strong.
You've
But
had some good ones over the years. Like, you were the Zach Ertz guy.
I was Zach Ertz guy.
Yeah. And I was like, every once in a while, like, hey, Zach, I'm Dave. Nice to see you again.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I never really thought about that. Yeah,
Mhm.
we kind of have our guys that we gravitate to. Who's like who's your ultimate guy that you would write about that I never probably even met?
You never met. I don't know. I'm trying to think if there's one who like.
I mean, I've done stories on Jordan Mailata, but I think when you do your getting through camp series,
Yeah, I end up knowing those guys pretty well.
you got a really good relationship with Jalix and Jordan,
Mhm.
and who else was
TJ.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway,
That's fun. All right. Let's take a little break. On the other side, we have matchups and a bunch of questions from you guys.
you deserve a car that thrills you, a car that puts goosebumps on your goosebumps. At Nissan, we got everything from turbocharged SUVs to 100% electric vehicles that'll make your heart beat faster. Experience the thrill for yourself and shop your local Nissan store at nissanusa.com today.
Celebrity cook Steve Martorano brings his Italian-American cooking back home to Philly. Enjoy Martorano's Prime at Rivers Casino and Steve's famous meatballs with Sunday gravy, prime steaks, and more. Make reservations at Martorano's Prime on Open Table. All right, a big matchup on Sunday Night Football. Eagles-Rams. On paper, you're like, oh, what do you mean? Eagles are 8-2, the Rams are 5-5, but don't be fooled by that 5-5 record. That's a good team. They've been much better since they've gotten healthy, specifically with Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua. That's where we'll start with the matchups. Those two guys are really good.
They're really good. And, Puka Nacua kind of came out of nowhere. What he's been able to do. You said diving catch he made.
Day 3 draft pick. He just immediately came in, was great.
Yeah. I mean, the volume of targets and catches that he gets is nuts. I mean, he'll get targeted 12 times, and Cooper Kupp will be close to that. These young corners have played really, really well, but they've never, and they both play inside.
Cooper Kupp, a ton.
Yeah, a ton. And
which is setting up a very fun matchup.
It is.
Cooper versus Cooper.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, these corners have played well, and there've been a lot of games where they faced one really good wide receiver, but they haven't had a challenge like this. I'm really curious to see how it goes. And Stafford's, he's got great chemistry with those two guys. And he's a guy who's going to throw it 40, 45 times and put up a bunch of yards. He's really good. He's been good for a long time. So it's a tough challenge. Both those guys are terrific.
Yeah, and they're so good after the catch.
Yeah.
Like, they're really well-rounded receivers. Like, they're good in just about everything. They're really good after the catch, and Stafford is so good being on time, getting them the football. Puka Nacua runs all these in-breaking routes from an outside receiver position that you got to be aware of. They're also good blockers. Underrated stuff. Slay was talking about that a little bit on Wednesday. Like, these guys are doing everything on the field they're being asked to do.
Yeah, and they're gonna probably make more plays against these young corners than any receivers have this year. So it's going to be imperative that they, put it behind them. You get beat for a 25-yarder, put it behind you, and go play the next snap. I think both these guys are wired that way, but it's going to be different than facing the Giants or the Browns or the Jaguars or whoever. I mean,
maybe Quinyon Mitchell at this point.
I agree.
Every single thing that's been in front of him, he's been able to slow down.
They haven't faced anybody like these guys, like a duo.
Maybe not a duo, but I don't know if the duo matters to Quinyon when he's 1-on-1 against Nacua.
Yeah, but I mean, the second best guy has never been as good as I don't know who the second best guy is. It's probably Cooper Kupp's second best guy out of that group. But no, look, I'm confident. I'm picking the Eagles, and I believe in these corners, and I think that they'll make more plays than they give up. But I just don't think, as a group, they faced a challenge like this.
You're probably right. They got off a little easy in Cincinnati with T. Higgins.
Yeah,
they're a different team when he plays.
Yeah,
well, different offense, maybe not a different team.
Right.
They're struggling a little bit. The next matchup is Vic Fangio against Sean McVay and Matthew Stafford. Vic Fangio kind of put out the blueprint many years ago for facing this offense. But even as Vic mentioned, like that was a long time ago. That was 6 years ago.
Yeah.
But so much of this Rams offense is like the eye candy, the pre-snap motion. What are they? 82% motion this year, which is a ton. And it's meant to feast on teams that aren't disciplined, that aren't technically sound. So far, this Eagles defense has been all of those things. It's been very technically sound, very disciplined. So I think they have the makeup to not get completely discombobulated by what the Rams try to do.
Yeah, you would think they're trying to take advantage of guys that don't know what's eye candy and what's the play. And these guys seem to be pretty good at that. But they haven't faced it. They haven't faced anyone who does it as well as the Rams, certainly.
I just think back to that Cooper DeJean play on fourth down where he's tracking the whole way against neighbors and blows it up.
Yeah. Yeah. Eyes. You got to have good eyes and
got to have good eyes. And you have to I've been so impressed by this defense, the way you watch them pass off in zone coverage, advanced things for young players who haven't been playing together that long.
6 games.
Yeah. It's amazing to see how smooth they look. And now obviously the Rams offense is designed to try to throw you up or trip you up, not throw up, try to trip you up and confuse you a little bit. I just have so much confidence in this defense right now. Yeah. I never thought in week 12, I'd be like, man, I have way more confidence in the defense than the offense. And that's not a shot at the offense. That's just, this defense has been so good.
Yeah. And the crazy thing is Cooper DeJean's played 6 games in his life that he's actually played on defense, other than a couple snaps here and there. So it's come together way faster than I think anybody expected. I talked to Cooper about that because, I've been harping on they're the youngest defense in the NFL. Even with Slay in the lineup, they're by far the youngest. The game he missed when Isaiah Rodgers played, was he 26?
Were you hoping Keeley would get the start just to bring down the average age even more?
Way down, yeah.
Keeley's 19.
He's 22. Yeah, he's 22. But Cooper said, we're all so close off the field, and it really helps us on the field. We learn to communicate. We understand each other. He said it's a real thing. It really raises our level of play. He said we all like each other. We're all around the same age. We hang out together. We have the same interests. All that connecting nonsense that Nick's always harping on it's real. It's a real thing. It's easy to make fun of it, and I will, and I have, and I will again, but it does work.
It matters. And when we talked about Reed Blankenship being underrated, I think one of the more underrated things that he does is bring stability to the back end.
Yeah.
Obviously the linebackers are responsible for setting up the line and handling a lot of that, but Reed's kind of been the steady force on the back end of that defense with a lot of moving pieces. They've had Slay in and out of the lineup. Obviously they made the switch from Avante to Cooper DeJean after 4 weeks. So there've been some moving pieces. Reed's been the guy settling everything down.
Yeah, no doubt.
Eagles defensive line against this Rams offensive line. Rams O-line did a good job last week with some pieces out. They've kind of been in flux all year, but they haven't been bad, surprisingly. They've held up.
I think Stafford's been sacked 5 times in the last 4 games or 6 times in the last 5 games.
Yeah.
I think four times in the last month and a half he hasn't been sacked at all. So yeah.
And it's not like he's back there dipping and diving.
No, he just gets rid of it as fast as anybody.
Yeah. He's 36 years old. He's not trying to get hit.
Yeah. Yeah. If you do, if you do have a shot on him, he's not going to run away from you, but he's so smart and he's been doing this so long and he gets rid of the ball so fast. And especially when he has these guys, the ball's coming out. So,
now what I will say is if you can get some pressure on him, you can disrupt him.
Yeah. He'll throw a pick too.
Yeah. He's completing just 47.3% of his passes and averaging just 5.5 yards per attempt when he's under pressure. So if you can get to him a little bit, you can throw him off his game.
Yeah. And I think that's going to be the key. You're not going to get a ton of sacks. You might not get any, but if you can pressure him it's going to be huge. And look, he's 36, so he's not escaping anything. So, and I like the way. Sweat's playing. I think BG's still playing well. He hasn't slowed down, and like we mentioned, Nolan. So those guys are going to be huge. You don't have Huff, might not have Jalix. I don't know how much he would have played anyway, but that's going to be huge.
Flipping over to the Eagles offense, this is a good Rams D line. No Aaron Donald anymore, so that's nice to not have to deal with him. But they're good. Jared Verse right now is the front runner to win Defensive Rookie of the Year, and he's been really good.
Yeah, what's he got? Like 4.5 sacks, 6 tackles for loss. Very active player. 2 forced fumbles, 14 quarterback hits. Yeah. So
really disruptive.
Yeah.
And they have another rookie in Fisk that's playing extremely well too.
Yeah. Yeah. So I love and Covey Turner.
Covey Turner's good, man.
He's really good.
Yeah. He's I think he's one of the more underrated players at that position in the league. He's fun to watch.
Yeah, every time I see him, he's making plays. Yeah, no doubt. And they have Byron Young.
Yeah. Now, it's a real shame the Eagles' Byron Young is on IR because you could have a Byron Young versus Byron Young game.
I was thinking that when I saw Byron Young with the Rams, I was like, did they poach him from the Eagles practice squad? But no. He's on IR.
Different positions.
Yeah, Eagles Byron Young's an interior guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bigger defensive tackle. Oh, by the way, he's on IR. He was on a side field the other day.
I did see him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's what made me think there's 2 Byron Youngs. But Alabama, did they both go to Alabama? Where'd the other Byron Young go?
Ooh.
The Rams Byron Young. I don't know. I don't expect you to know that.
I should know that, but I don't actually.
Mr. Draft.
Tennessee.
Okay.
Darn it, I should have known that.
After starting at Georgia Military.
Yeah.
Where's Georgia Military, Dave?
Tennessee. AJ Brown could be in for a big game in this one. The Rams corners aren't very good. Our old friend Akilla Witherspoon is there. If you remember, the last time he faced Witherspoon was in that Steelers game. Had a really big game against him, 4 for 74 and 2 touchdowns. So if they get AJ Brown against Witherspoon in this game, I'd guess we're going to see bombs away.
Yeah, I would think so. And I mean, AJ's been. I'd like to see AJ get more targets. His targets are down.
Not like Devontae's targets.
Devontae's targets are down more. I wonder how much of that is a product of the hammy. But there's no reason AJ shouldn't be getting 12 targets a game. And I think he's getting like 6.8 or something.
Mm-hmm.
That number's got to go up. It's way lower. I mean, he was up over 9 last year and the year before. And a lot of that's because they're running so much. But it's working. It's a good formula, but you can't forget about AJ Brown. I'd like to see him have one of his 140 to 160 type games.
I could see that.
I think this is an opportunity.
Yeah, I do too. And then Saquon is obviously going to get the rock. They're not going to stop that. I think it's probably a little easier to throw on the Rams than it is to run on them, but it's not like they have a great run defense either.
Yeah. They're ranked a lot higher in yards per carry than yards per game, which is interesting. And you get that when you can throw against a team. So,
and not a lot of yards before contact, which is something the Eagles have been so good at this year, just creating these massive holes.
Right.
That, like, anyone could run through them, but Saquon is like bursting through them and taking it to the house.
Yeah. I think they can run on anyone.
They think so too.
Yeah. Maybe not the Browns. They didn't run on the Browns, but everyone else. Some of the rushing numbers, they have the most rushing attempts through 10 games of any team since 1974. It was like 50 years ago. I wasn't even covering the team back then.
You were just getting ready to.
I was going to a lot of Yes concerts back then. But I really think they can run on the Rams. I think they can throw on them too. I'd like to see them be a little more balanced because I think it's a game where And look, I love the way this defense is playing, but I don't think they're going to hold them to 13 points.
Yeah.
And I think it's a game where you're going to have to make some plays in the air.
I'm fascinated to see how the Rams play them defensively. They've stacked the box on about 17% of their defensive snaps. That ranks 24th in the league. So I think this is a good test to see like how opposing defenses are going to handle this rushing attack. Because they've been okay stopping the run without loading the box, but this is a game where you might need to sell out to do it a little bit more.
And if you do, there's going to be opportunities down the field, especially if Devontae's playing.
Yeah. All right. You want to do some questions?
Yeah.
They have a bunch of them. We won't get to all of them, but thanks for sending all these in. If you want to send us a question, it's eagleeye@nbcuni.com. If you're watching the game on Sunday night, you get a question, you want us to answer it on next week's pod, feel free to do that. If you're watching on YouTube, you have the QR code. You can scan it there. Let's start off today with Pete. Fellas, love the pod. Rube's music takes are solid. Two-parter. Does the success of the D maybe change Howie's perspective on linebackers going forward? Part 2, we can't let Zach Bond walk, right? Thanks for the content.
Yeah, I think we had a similar question Tuesday or whenever.
We might get this question every week until they sign Zach Bond.
Yeah, I think it would have to. But I also think he's a unique player, and they got him cheap. So we'll see. I think it has to change it. And like I think I said Tuesday, if you just take his production and forget what position he plays, I mean, you're not going to get a lot of linebackers who are doing what Zach Bond is doing. And
you're not going to have to pay him edge rusher money.
Right.
Like linebackers have been depreciated too. It's kind of like running back.
Yeah.
Or if you get an impact player for like a rotational price or for a player who's going to play every snap, like I think you can make it work. And like I brought up earlier that you have 7 of your 11 starters on rookie contracts. Now, eventually you have to pay some of these guys, but I think you can afford to, it's a little bit of a luxury to spend at linebacker, at least from the Eagles' traditional view of it, but you can talk yourself into it.
Yeah. Yeah, no doubt.
And for a player that's that impactful, I think I shouldn't even say talk yourself into it. That makes it seem like you're talking yourself into a bad decision. I'm not sure it would be.
No. And I can't speak for Zach Bond. And when he's asked about it, he doesn't even go there. He doesn't want to talk about the future, but seems to really like it here. He's in a place where they know how to use him and get the most out of him. I think he loves playing with Covey. They become very close. I think he might get a hometown discount. Well, it wouldn't be a discount if you do it before free agency, which you better do. I think he likes it here.
It's still a discount because you don't have to sign.
Right. But I think he likes it here, and hopefully that makes a difference.
Yeah, he's talked about like how comfortable he feels here. He feels like himself here.
Yeah.
So,
and it's interesting. He talked about how he changed high schools because he just wasn't comfortable in his first one.
Mm-hmm.
So it's obviously something that's very important to him, being in that comfortable place.
Yeah, maybe how we can take advantage of it.
I would.
It seems mean to say, but
no,
might be the case.
Try.
Yeah. Next question from Jack. Hi, Dave and Rube. Love the pod, yada, yada, yada. In the fourth quarter, we saw Goddard almost cough it up and give Washington the chance to go down and take the lead with less than 7 minutes on the clock, only for Calcaterra to storm in and get on the ball first. I can't help but feel this is symbolic of Calcaterra possibly taking over the reins at tight end 1 next year. How likely do you think that is? Or is it more likely we draft a new tight end 1 and simply keep Goddard around for the last year of his contract?
Yeah, he's signed for another year, so I don't think Calcaterra is going to be. I'm not sure Calcaterra is a tight end 1. Especially,
I think he could be. He'd be a different type of tight end 1.
He sure would. Yeah, I think Goddard will be here next year. I'd be surprised if that does happen. I don't think it'll be next year.
I am a little surprised they haven't drafted at tight end. Calcaterra's. I mean, they don't draft many tight ends. Period.
They don't.
You know, they drafted Ertz in 13. They drafted. I remember when we did like our best and worst picks. Our guy Clay Harbor had to be. He was a fine pick, but he had to be like on the bad tight end list because they just haven't, like, by pure numbers, they haven't drafted many.
Who was the kid from Florida?
Cornelius Ingram.
He was always hurt. Was he a draft pick?
Yeah,
late round pick, 6 or 7,
something like that.
Yeah.
He didn't work out, but like they drafted Ertz in 13.
Selleck was what, 07?
07.
He was a 5.
Mm-hmm.
He had a really.
They drafted LJ.
LJ was a high pick. Was he at 2?
Mm-hmm.
Caught a touchdown.
But like since Ertz, they've drafted Goddard and Calcaterra.
Yeah.
And they got Jack Stoll as an undrafted guy.
Yeah. Yeah, it might be about time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We'll see what happens.
And they've all been, they've drafted good tight ends. They've had Selleck, Ertz, and Goddard, 3 pretty good ones.
Definitely. Next question from Ted. Rube, in response to doctors and our busy lives, I'm a Philadelphia native, diehard Eagles fan / heart failure and heart transplant specialist in Charlotte, North Carolina. We are great at multitasking and doing our jobs while supporting our team at the same time. It's fun. Ted also sent us a photo of him in Eagle scrubs. I forgot to get that ready, but cool photo there. My question, I think Jalen has been very solid this year and has been doing a great job at cutting down turnovers. Those red zone turnovers are killers. He delivers the ball in tight spots beautifully. My main criticism relates to his field vision, which needs improvement. Do you think he can get better? How much of this can be taught?
Well, I think he has gotten better. So, yeah, and I think Jalen's a guy that's always targeting his deficiencies, and he takes them very seriously, and he works on them. And I think we saw that during the bye week. And we see that with this program that he's on now. It's physical, it's not mental, but yeah, I think he's always looking to where can I get better, and I think he's gotten better at not forcing things down in the red zone.
Yeah, in terms of just like pure vision, I think it's always going to be a thing with a shorter quarterback and tall offensive linemen. Like it's not going anywhere, and the Eagles have 2 of the biggest guards in the league. So I think that, like, just from a pure vision standpoint, there are those issues, and you're never going to. I think it probably does contribute to the lack of middle of the field to some extent.
Sure. I know Howie's talked about drafting some 5'6" guys, 5'8" guards to try to compensate. But yeah, I think considering his height limitations, you love a guy. Tanner McKee, you love a guy with that kind of size, but Jalen's never going to have that unless he has a growth spurt at 27.
Unlikely.
Probably not.
Yeah. But like you can also like move the pocket a little bit. That can sometimes open up throwing lanes that you wouldn't have in a normal pocket. Like there are things the coaching staff can do to help a little bit.
Yeah.
Next from Julian. This is a good one. I'll get to this. Reacting to a couple things you guys said about the wide receiver 3 position. To me, Covey is by far the better option at wide receiver 3 than Dotson. Dave, you said something to the effect of if you get one explosive play from your wide receiver 3 every game or so, then that might be enough. I totally disagree with that. I would like to see AJ and Smitty making those explosive plays. From a wide receiver 3, I think the underneath chain moving role is far more important. Sure, we have Saquon. What if he's covered? In the few games where we saw Covey, he moved the chains pretty often. I think Howie is making a mistake with the kinds of guys he is looking to fill the wide receiver position 3 with. We saw the same thing with Quez and Rager when Greg Ward was the better receiver in every aspect of the game other than pure measurables and was totally shut out of the game plan by Sirianni. And we saw it again when Paris Campbell and John Ross, of all people, were elevated earlier this season over Kyle Phillips, who I will again pound the table for. Kyle Phillips was just released.
Yeah, I don't want to get I like Covey, and he's got a nice little knack for catching the ball out of the slot, but he's got 2 first downs this year in the receiving game. So I don't know about that moving the sticks thing.
Yeah. But I want to address the theory of it though.
Yeah.
Because I think it's a valid question. Like what prototype is better in that wide receiver? And I understand his point that like you'd want your big time playmakers to make the explosive plays, but I also want AJ to move the chains. Like I want to be able to trust AJ and Devontae to move the chains. And I think the element of speed does matter. It can't like supersede everything. It can't be like, let's throw John Ross out there and hope that he has 4.2 speed and the defense cares about it. But it takes one big play and then all of a sudden they do have to really respect it.
Yeah, and I like Covey as a receiver, and I think there's a place for him in this offense because he's so different from everyone else, and it's going to take Jalen trusting him, which I think he does, and delivering the ball to him on those 3rd and 4s and 3rd and 3s. I think he's a pretty good option in those situations.
Yeah. Okay. They've also been mixing some of the other guys in. Like they have a role for Johnny Wilson. They have a role for Anais Smith. Find that interesting.
Yeah, and Johnny Wilson is a guy who he's got that great size. I like him in the red zone. He had the 1 touchdown. He had an OPI on, but he's such a good blocker.
He got the real touchdown.
He got the real touchdown. Had to cut his hair. I haven't seen him.
I haven't either.
Where's he been? Well, we were only in there one day. I wasn't even in there.
Yeah.
I was outside stalking Jordan Davis. But I think he's such a good blocker that even when he's not getting targeted, I think he's helping.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Let's finish it up with this one from Brian, emailing from the ARO, Atmospheric Research Laboratory in the South Pole. Actually, that's not true, but I thought it might boost my chances of getting the question in the show. I grew up in Westchester, but I'm currently living in Denver. First, I want to say
2 great towns.
Thank you so much for the show. As many others have noted, I love the blend of useful information and the lighthearted banter. In addition to getting my fix of Eagles info, there are many times where you all have me laughing out loud. Thank you very much. My question is about Nolan Smith. I had such high hopes for him coming out of the draft, and the buzz in his first training camp was that he was flying around the edge and looked to be developing into a pass rushing force. He didn't get a ton of time last year, and while he's been improving lately, it could be said that he's been a disappointment. But last night, seeing him come around the edge, I was yelling, "Nolan, get him!" And to see him come away with the sack and see how happy the guys were for him was so great. I know it isn't his first sack, but that really seemed like his first big-time full credit sack in a big moment. Do you think we would look back on that play as the moment he turned the corner, pun intended? Thank you for all you do and keep up the great work. Go Birds.
I mean, I thought he turned the corner before that. It was a good play. We talked about it earlier, but I feel like since the bye week, he's been a force and he's been consistently good and disruptive. So yeah, I thought that was a huge play for him, and it was at a big moment. It was on a 3rd down, when the game was still up in the air. But I really think he's been playing well for a while now.
Yeah, I do too. And I think how good he was in training camp as a rookie probably hurt him a little bit.
Yeah,
because it raised expectations. Like,
you're right. He was great that first summer.
He was great. Like, we were talking about him more than Jalen Carter because he was just flashing so much. It was the pure athleticism. And I think we all kind of got carried away and forgot that, no, he's pretty raw. Like, he wasn't super productive in college. It's going to take some time.
He was also practicing against Winston Justice. So I think
he was not practicing.
He wasn't?
No.
Okay.
No, I mean, there were some, like, he was practicing against some pretty good players.
Sure.
Yeah. And then, like, as much as he never wanted to talk about it, and he still won't, I do think the shoulder was bothering him
clearly
last year. So I think all that blended into, like, ended up being a disappointing rookie season when it shouldn't have been as disappointing.
What was that quote he said? Sometimes
it's my baby. Sometimes she works, sometimes she don't.
That was concerning.
I'm paraphrasing. I was close though.
Yeah. I like your quote better than his. But yeah, he's come a long way.
Yeah. It's been fun to watch him.
Yeah.
Man, if they nail that pick, that's a big deal. Because like you mentioned, that position is kind of up in the air after this year.
Yeah. What do you think happens with Sweat?
I don't know.
He's still young.
Yeah, I think the league kind of told you what they thought of him last year.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be opposed to bringing him back.
Me too.
Yeah.
I think he comes back.
Although I think you might need another big swing, whether that's draft or free agency for that position.
Anybody in particular who might be available in the division?
He's not available yet.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Okay. Prediction time. He got in this game.
I was really leaning Rams for a couple days.
And I was trying to talk you into it.
You were.
Whenever I know that I'm picking one way already and you like mention it to me that you might be going the other way, I try to make sure you go the other way.
Yeah. I think it's a dangerous game. I think it's a tough game. I don't think anything's going to come easy in this game. But I think I've quoted the scene in Bull Durham before when Crash Davis says to Nuke LaRouche, when you're on a streak, you have to trust that, you have to respect the streak. That's what I'm going to do. I mean, 6 in a row is 6 in a row, and they're playing really well. And I still think, as good as the defense has been, and they've been lights out for a month and a half, the offense is averaging like close to 30 points over the last 6 games. I don't feel like they've really hit their stride. Mm-hmm. They've left a lot of points on the table, a lot of meat on the bone. And I just feel like against that defense, I think there's going to be a lot of opportunities. I think it's going to be, the game's going to be played in the high 20s or low 30s, but I think they're equipped to win that type of game.
Yeah, I do too. I mean, it would help if they started a little faster.
That would be nice.
Maybe they can just pretend it's the second quarter when they get out there.
That's a good way to think about it.
Yeah, I'm picking the Eagles in this game too.
Yeah.
All right. If you have any questions for us, eagle@nbcuni.com. If you enjoy the Eagle Eye podcast, please do us a favor, rate and subscribe wherever you get your pods. If you're watching on YouTube, please click the like button and subscribe there as well. We'll be coming to you late, well, probably early Monday morning after that Sunday night game. For Rube, I'm Dave. This has been Eagle Eye presented by Nissan. We'll talk to you soon.